Recording in progress. All right. So, hello everyone. My name is Kat. This is COVID Combos, the show that's not a show, where we talk about things that are going on. And I'm here with Jason Martin today. And you have, my friend, a story to share with us about quarantining in Canada, what it's like to arrive in Canada these days, and what your recent experience was coming back from overseas and experiencing hotel quarantina as they are set up now for us as Canadian citizens. So just love to hear a little bit about your background, and then we'll move into the story if you don't mind, Jason.
Sure. Pretty well my whole life it's been a military career, serving overseas and encountering many dangerous situations. So it's kind of a experiences people don't normally have, but it's really changed me as a person and my outlook on life. And I'm a true patriot. I love my country. I would fight any day for my country to protect its citizens. So I'm very strong in supporting my country, and that'll never end. That'll continue right to the day, that I move on in this life to another planet or another heavenly area.
I'd love to circle back around to that idea of what it means to actually fight to protect our rights and freedoms in this country. So where were you coming from most recently when you tried to re-enter your home country, and could you maybe start to tell us a little bit of what happened when you hit the ground here?
Yeah, sure. It was actually in January 2021. There was no restrictions leaving the country, coming in or quarantine or 2 weeks or hotels or anything like that. And I have a fiance in Colombia, South America, and decided it was a good time to go down because I hadn't seen her in 11 months and it'd been hard on everybody. So I left January 7th, stayed till my 3-month stay was coming to a near close. And then I called the Colombian government and they allowed me to stay another 3 months, which took me through to June 13th. And of course, I've been following the news back in Canada. Things were a little bit crazy in around March in Toronto. So I just decided to stay longer, stay as long as I could. Everything was open down there, wearing masks, but all businesses functioning. They didn't have lockdowns like we had in Canada.
What about cases and so on? Was there any evidence that there was a pandemic taking place in Colombia, or?
Yeah, the people, it's a hot climate, not too hot, but it's a pretty hot climate. People are outside a lot down in Colombia, and they have wonderful food, so their health is good. And even though they still had high cases down there, maybe 8,000 a day, but Colombia has 50 million people where Canada has 37 million. And their medical system is not readily available like it is here in a social type program. So it's a completely different country. And so because of that, I think because of the poverty, cases obviously would spread faster.
Okay, so situation was happening, but the response by the government in terms of lockdowns and mandates and so on was different.
Yeah,
So
they didn't have the draconian type measures down there. Obviously the government was concerned for the safety of the citizens, but it's just a different world. The people don't like to be locked up in their houses. They actually stand up for their rights there. They take to the streets if they oppose the government because they're defending their rights as citizens of Colombia, which is, we stand up here in Canada, but we're, oh, well, I guess we'll just have to stay in our home. Oh, I guess we'll wear masks. Oh, I guess I'll have to take a vaccine if I want to work. So it's a different mindset and just a different mindset.
So they might be more used to challenging oppression historically than we are as a society here in Canada.
Yeah, like down there, they're just more vocal and more energetic to stand up for themselves. Here, I find we're just kind of lulled into the sleep paralysis, and we don't really respond. We're like being cooked like a, you know, like a frog in cold water, and you turn the heat up slow, and it eventually boils. That frog has no idea what's going on before it's too late. It's kind of like that. It's a slow increase of measures that we just kind of hand our rights over, not realizing what we're giving up, and not really standing up for what was just.
Mhm. So what happened for you when you touched down this June? Where did you come into? Toronto?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Toronto.
Yeah. So what happened when you arrived at the airport, got off the plane?
So in Cali, Colombia, you obviously they actually have a very good medical system. I took the COVID test prior to boarding the plane and waited for my test negative, which it was. Boarded the plane, landed in Panama City, and then further continued to Toronto. Arrived in Toronto, went through the normal processes, cleared customs, and no issues. Proceeded. Then they kind of guide you towards the medical staff. Got about 4 or 5 people there with these little booths, and then there's 5 police officers just kind of at the ready, anticipating any issues or problems with people. So you didn't really have a choice where you went at the airport. You were guided there. And the first question, of course, was, where's your booking for your hotel? So, of course, I'm a little more apt to be on top of the news and knowing what's going on. So I already had pre-booked my hotels in Colombia at the quarantine hotel.
So you knew when you left Colombia that you would be required to quarantine, and you prepared for that and were ready to do it, basically. Not a
Yeah,
problem.
exactly. So I had, of course, when I left Canada initially, I wasn't pre-warned that any of these measures were going to be coming. It was something that happened later. So, you know, I'm going there, but I'm obviously not trying to resist the mandatory measures implemented by the Ontario government. I was actually following the mandate by pre-booking my hotels in Toronto at the COVID hotel. But one problem had arisen initially because my credit card was only so big, and I can't just get another credit card in Colombia, obviously. So I booked my 2 nights at the Hilton Hotel and showed that to the individual who wanted to see my pre-bookings. And I showed him clearly. I said, yeah, I have my bookings right here. I booked 2 nights at the Hilton, but I couldn't book the 3rd night because my credit card was full. But I said, I don't live here. I'll just pay that 3rd night with a debit Visa or leave cash deposit. And he, you know, didn't like that very much and issued me a $6,255 fine. And you know, I'm ex-military, and I'm obviously just representing and displaying to you my full intention is I don't live in Toronto. I've pre-booked 2 nights. I would have booked 3. So the reason why I didn't book the 3rd is because my card was full, and I'd simply just pay that at the hotel, which is completely acceptable with any common sense thought process. Would look at that and say, oh, I see. Yeah, we can easily call the hotel and follow up. But no, $6,255 fine. I thought that was a little over the top.
So just to clarify, the 3-day quarantine that was required, and it's getting so unclear. There's so many changes. There's been so many changes. So we've heard 2-week quarantine. Some people do 1-week quarantine. At the moment, was it 3 days and that's all you were required, or was it 3 days and then a PCR test and then we'll see? Or what was your expectation coming in? You had to have the 3 days and you tried to get that done, and that was it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, prior to landing, my understanding was I had to book 3 nights, or sorry, 2 nights, 3 days. And they would give me a test at the airport, and then I would remain at the hotel awaiting this result. Of course, would be, or, negative. And then you would continue within Canada to travel to your destination. I thought it was strange, though, why my plane was leaving 4 hours later, why they would send me to a hotel, rather just keep me in the international section of the airport, and I would just continue my next plane. But rather inconvenience me, giving me a $6,000 fine, and sidetrack me and expose me to more potentially COVID people. It's actually, it's counterproductive, really, if you're looking at pandemics and spread.
So going back to that, so you've received your $6,000 fine. What's going through your head at that point, as you've just explained your situation and your intention to get the third night taken care of? Did they give you any options?
No, there wasn't any options. I said, well, you know what, sir, I'm not signing that. I don't feel that that is acceptable. I just feel that I've obviously displayed my intentions. I booked the 2 nights and explained why I didn't book the third, but simply that I would take care of the third night. I had the money, not a problem. But his comment was, well, here's your ticket and you can go about your business. I thought, well, that's a strange statement to say, go about your business. So as soon as I got the ticket, COVID is no longer a situation or an interest of yours. So I just found that comment very odd. You can go about your business. So what is the whole point here? Giving out tickets or reducing the spread of COVID? So it was kind of confused me for a moment. And I was very, of course, my previous history in the military. So I've been exposed to a lot of violence and danger. So I was trying to keep myself calm, and I just talk to myself and say, just stay calm, we'll deal with the ticket later, and just get out of the airport and go to the hotel.
So your plan was basically still to go to the Hilton, because you had
Yeah.
one night there, you're in Toronto and you have nowhere else to go. However,
Exactly.
At this point, now that you have the $6,000 ticket, you are no longer required to go to the Hilton.
Exactly. So that's why I found it was strange, if they're concerned about the spread of COVID, by giving you a ticket, now they're just not concerned about COVID anymore. You can go about your business.
What was the ticket for, Jason? What were you actually ticketed for?
It just says I was in violation of the quarantine measures. I don't have the ticket handy to me here, but basically just breaking the mandatory process of the Quarantine Measures Act. So because I didn't book the third hotel night, didn't mean that I was deliberately violating their law. Simply, it was a matter of payment, the amount of payment, or when the payment was going to happen. Because I had already shown my intention. I didn't live in Toronto, so where else was I going? Why would you book 2 nights in a hotel if you're not going to stay there? It just defies common sense.
So what happened when you arrived at the hotel?
Yeah, so I took another $45 taxi cab over to the Hilton. By that time, it was like 4 a.m. So I was pretty tired, pretty fed up. Arrived there and I said, yeah, I'm supposed to be here for 3 days, COVID quarantine. He's like, yes, sir, no problem. So I put my luggage there and checks on the computer. He's like, oh yes, I see you have 2 nights reserved. He said, but you're supposed to have 3. I said, yeah, I was actually out of the country and my card was full, but no problem. I'll just pay debit Visa and leave you a cash deposit or whatever you need. He said, oh, sorry, sir, we can't accept your debit Visa or your cash here. We can only accept a credit card. I said, well, what do you mean? I said, I'm mandated to stay here by law. I have nowhere else to go. This is it. This is the quarantine hotel. I've paid, I've booked 2 nights, and I'm just gonna pay for my third night. I am tired. I want to go to bed. He said, sorry, sir, our policy here is only credit card. And I'm very, very frustrated. I'm tired. I said, listen, I'll tell you what, I will call my friend, he'll call in his credit card, and we'll get the situation taken care of so I can go to bed. And he actually came back and said, sorry, we can't even accept that. We can only accept a credit card with your name on it. I said, okay, so you're making a situation, turning this into something that's unacceptable. Because where else am I supposed to go? If I'm only allowed to stay here and you're not accepting my money, you're actually denying me access to the COVID hotel, and you are breaking the law. He said, well, I'm going to have to give you a refund. So he actually gave me a refund. And I was, here I am going to the door, exiting the building. And he says, oh, by the way, he said, you can't stay at any hotels in Toronto, only quarantine hotels. So that was pretty well, I was within a sheet of paper of exploding, but I just kept on, I didn't say nothing. I just walked out. And so here I am standing outside, a military man forced to live in the street with my luggage. Like, how is that some kind of process that the government has laid out? Is this the kind of protocol that we're supposed to follow? I don't live in Toronto. I live in New Brunswick. It is unacceptable for a military soldier to be denied access to the COVID hotel based on the method of payment. I don't have any choice to go anywhere else. They must accept any form of payment.
Ideally, Canadian legal tender, right?
Well, exactly. I mean, but I didn't have a choice. That's the whole point. I don't have a choice. I have to be there. You must accept all forms of payment. Not everybody has a $5,000 credit card kicking around. There's different economic situations.
Of course, yeah.
And there's I'm sure our government thinks everybody's walking around with a $5,000 credit card. So they're just a little bit disconnected from reality. Not everybody is situated like that.
What was the approximate cost for you for those, like what would have been for the 3 nights at the Hilton Hotel?
Well, it's actually interesting. It was $295 plus tax. So that would have been $369 plus taxes and all that. Probably would have been just over $1,000. But when I booked the hotel from Colombia, they actually booked me at a lower rate. And I thought to myself, well, that's not that bad. It was like 180 some. And so I didn't think any of them. It's the Hilton, it's their call center, they're booking the hotel. So I showed up, and that was the other thing he brought up. He said, you're at the wrong rate. And I said, well, I don't know, sir. I called your call center for the Hilton, and that's what they booked me. So it's not like, it's not my fault. It's your call-in center. So you can't fault me for that. They actually wanted to charge me the 180 plus add on top of the 2 days, and then charge me for a third day. And, of course, now the reason why I'm there is to wait for my COVID result. Well, if you get your COVID result test back within 24 hours and you're able to leave, obviously, the other 2 days, they keep that money. They just put that in their pocket. So I found that a little bit strange. They actually should refund you the days that were not used. But again, this is supposed to be a positive thing, slow the spread of COVID, but I think it's causing a lot of injury out there to Canadian citizens returning home. It's an intentional cause of injury and an overreach of authority where there's absolutely no discretion. It's black and white. And the whole point of them actually denying me access to the COVID hotel, the Hilton was actually in violation. They were in violation and forcing me to the street To me, it's just unacceptable.
So since you now made your way back home, back into Brunswick, what have you done? Have you attempted, excuse me, have you made contact with the Hilton or with any branch of government? Have you tried to reconcile this? Have you received any additional information or any helpful suggestions about what you can do to reconcile this?
Well, I called Doug Ford's office in Toronto and addressed the situation, and the person on the phone just said, gee, wow, I'm really sorry that happened. He said, but these tickets are issued by the federal government. And so of course this happened while I was in Toronto. I was inquiring. So basically they just hands off. They didn't
So
want
it's
to
not
do anything.
provincial jurisdiction.
Yeah, so they just forward me to call a federal number. Of course, it's still in Ontario, but it was a federal number. So since then, I've called in, had to download a form and fill it out, and that form and the ticket together and mail it into federal court. And I will plead not guilty, obviously. It's a shut, open, closed case. And I'm hoping if some lawyer out there can look at this from a legal aspect, where they have violated the mandatory quarantine, not me, the hotel, and a blatant abuse of my rights and discriminating against the form of payment of my Canadian currency, and actually exposing me to the street, putting me in danger, because legally I'm not allowed to stay at any hotels. So what? They're putting me in a situation. But I mean, any normal person would just go get another hotel. Well, that's
If you can afford it at that point, right?
well,
I mean,
yeah,
like
they
you said.
refunded my money, not right there and then. It's 5 days later. So now I'm gonna have to spend even another $600, $400. So it's now I'm up there, and I'm not even home. I'm in Toronto. You're running out of money in Toronto, not a good situation, especially when you're not allowed to stay in any hotels, and here you are with your luggage. Not a good situation, but they put me in that position. So legally, they are actually should be liable. And that's a thought that I haven't proceeded to investigate. And maybe one I should.
So what do you see here happening, being ex-military, having spent time in other countries which have well-established totalitarian regimes that live under tyranny? What are your impressions of what you see happening here in Canada and how the Canadian people are responding to it?
You know what I've noticed? In some of these countries, the information flow going from the government to the people is restricted, which means the government first has to approve that information going to the people, because by controlling the information, you actually literally control the people. Because if you control the information, now you can manipulate that population in towards fear, because you want them to follow a certain rule or agenda. You can turn people against each other through propaganda, perpetrated in coercion, in conjunction with the news media and the government working together to create a narrative that's meeting their agenda. And that's totalitarian control, mental control, physical control in the streets. Because really, if you're not educated, you're not able to make good decisions for your life and for your family. So if the government's controlling information, then you're basically at their will, you're going to follow the mandates, because now they're going to have police in the streets. If you don't follow the orders, a few people will die, and they videotape that and they show the rest of the population. So they lay down threats of repercussions if you don't follow our procedure and our mandated policies. This is what could happen to you. And I'm not saying Canada's like that, but those are the same tactics I see in other countries.
Right.
So
And free
it's,
speech and the flow of information, certainly online, is very much under attack now. And we don't, especially here in New Brunswick. I mean, when we talk about print media, is it even worth mentioning? I mean, honestly.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And for people who are not in New Brunswick, when we have the Irving, we used to call them a family. I think they're more a corporation. I don't know what they are, an entity, the Irving entity that owns our print media, that has so much control and well-established control. So there's a level of trust and authority gained over multiple generations of people being born into a system where they think this is the news, not
Mhm.
understanding what propaganda is and the role or the relationship between government and media. So it's very slippery slopes that we're on. And when you say it does control the mind, it's no exaggeration. I really feel people
Okay.
don't understand that enough.
Oh, exactly. Like I don't want to pick on Irving, but Irving has a lot of influence over not only New Brunswick, parts of Nova Scotia, parts of like it's a large company with a lot of power. They employ a lot of people. They've made friends with, in government, and they obviously contribute to policies that favor them. So you can see the pay for play.
Our
It's
current
happening.
premier being a 33-year employee of theirs.
Yeah, exactly. He has connections with the Irving. So, for example, I'm actually going to create taking waste plastics and creating building materials. And that process right there eliminates the fact that you have to cut trees down and disperse animals into other areas and damage our ecosystem, because we can't just keep continuing to cut trees. There are not going to be any trees left. Then what's going to happen after our rivers and oceans are polluted with plastics everywhere? So I've taken the step, but I'll tell you, my enemy is probably going to be Irving, and his friends in government are probably not going to assist me in developing this kind of business. And I already know that in advance. It's a sad thing, doing a good thing for the country and for the environment, not necessarily is a good thing to these people. I know it's kind of counterproductive in a different way to think about, but it's actually true.
Well, it's evident by the actions of corporations, of these groups, and what they're doing to our forests and our resources, that their intention is not to protect or preserve anything here. When we see Irving Nature Park, it's a sick joke. It truly is Irving Nature Reserve. So one thing I really wanted to hear from you about, Jason, is, so you described a little bit in totalitarian regimes that you've experienced in other places, so that people really live under a fear, and their government will make examples of, okay, what happens to people when they resist or dissent against rules. So going back to the situation that's developing so quickly in Canada, how do you see people responding mentally and emotionally to the manipulation from the propaganda, from the government? And as an ex-military, as an ex-soldier, what's your impression of what is needed from the general public in order to help slow things down, at the least, if not turn our direction back towards something that looks salvageable?
You know, I find I'm kind of a different person. As long as a lot of military guys, they look at a situation, assess the dangers, assess the obstacles, and also address immediate change in their operations. But looking at Canada as a whole and the general population, a lot of people are distracted. They're distracted. They're distracted by the news. They're distracted by hysteria and fear, and people actually feel fear. They're actually walking around with two masks by themselves. I see it in their car. So when you see that, you think to yourself, my God, like what is going on in that person's mind? And there's tens of thousands of people like that. So you're like, well, how, like, you just common sense would say, you're by yourself in your vehicle. So it obviously the media and the government have pre-planned this disbursement of information in increments to brainwash, scare, use fear, so that people will submit out of fear. Well, if I don't submit, then I'm going to be exposed to COVID and I'm probably going to die, even though it's a 99.6% survival rate. But, you know, you probably have a better chance of dying in a car accident than COVID. Not saying COVID's not real, but I think that people need to start communicating with each other. We need to start talking. I find that we become paralyzed and we don't communicate simply because we're allowing our minds to be overtaken by the thought propaganda. And that's a very dangerous thing for our democracy, and a very dangerous thing for our freedom. We need to think as individuals in an intelligent way by fact finding and educating yourselves. Because these other countries, if you can't educate yourself because the internet is limited, then how can you make decisions, or what? You don't know anything different. So you just follow them like a bunch of cattle, like a bunch of cows, just in a herd, just aimlessly following the leadership of the government. But that's not democracy. Democracy is freedom of speech, freedom of movement, and freedom of thought, and not to worry if you have a different opinion based on education. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a healthy environment open for debate, because that's how we grow as a society. Once you cut off development and communication and to move our country forward, then we really don't move forward at all. We actually regress, and that is scary. That's scary. One person against the other, race against race. It's division, and that's exactly their strategy, is to divide us, vaxxed against unvaxxed. You know, color, race against race. If these people are fighting, then the government can continue their agenda in the background while we're all distracted. We need to be focused and start communicating.
Yeah, I think we are definitely being attacked on the level of identity, that attack on individuality, and also we're being attacked in our emotions, you know. Collectively, we're very willing to be upset and outraged and take actions about things that the government tells us to be upset and outraged about, but it's so contrived and manipulated. We see it over and over and over. Them feeding us, you know, the latest tagline, the latest issue, the latest social justice thing that everyone can glom onto, and it's never quite exactly what needs to be addressed. You know, and that's I think that's one of the things that concerns me the most, is just the ignorance, the ignorance, the willingness to ignore the present day realities of what is actually happening, and to be outraged about things that may not even be happening here in our province and sometimes in our country at all, barely. You know, it's
well, it's funny, like, I don't know, maybe people think that they're just insignificant. Like, if I speak up, it's really not going to impact or change anything. You know what? But I'm telling you right now, do you love your children? Do you love your family? Well, because it's going to affect them down the road. What is their future? As a soldier, we have to defend our country. Why? For future generations, to preserve our future generations. That's why we serve and protect our citizens of Canada, to preserve the generations ahead of us. And that's why I'm willing to sacrifice. If that's my life, first, like police officers, firefighters, we all have the same kind of thought process. Though it may be a little crazy, but we just, in our heart, we've just committed to that, accepting that fate. So, but beyond that, each individual in our country needs to think our future. What is our future for our country, and especially our children?
Mm-hmm.
The emphasis should be on our children. What is the education system teaching them? What are we doing to protect democracy and stand up against rules and regulations and policies that are counterproductive in the growth of our country? Those are very important points that each of us need to think about every day.
I'm curious, Jason, in your military experience, what's the go-to response when you're given a task that you don't feel like doing, or you don't feel like doing that day at that time, or maybe it's too negative for you to want to deal with at that moment? How do you deal with that as a military person?
Well, we're a band of brothers, and you say, we just look at each other and say, well, boys, we have good days and we have bad days. Just happen to be today's a bad day. But you know what? We buckle down, we strap in, and we do what has to get done, regardless if it's raining and snowing and wet and cold. I was in an area, it was -40. I literally had to do push-ups to stay warm. Otherwise, I would have reached hypothermia. Other guys were actually helicoptered out. They had frozen feet. And those are real things, but that's part of the training. And you have to endure those situations, because what's going to happen when the real thing happens? What are you going to do? How are you going to respond? You can't say, well, it's kind of a rainy day out there, I don't think I'm going to protect this town or protect these civilians. You don't have a choice, strap in, let's go, lock and load. And that's the hua brotherhood. We each have each other's backs. And as Canadians, we have to have each other's backs. We have to work together. They want us dispersed. If we're dispersed, we're weak. If we're together, we're strong. And that's the mindset. Together, we're strong. Divided, we fall.
Yeah, and we'll fall for anything. So what would you say to our young individuals who, what do you do in the face of crisis, who might be inclined to just stand around with their telephone and live stream it to social media? What would you say to this? Because this is the attitude we're facing in my generation. If we need to fight for freedom on the night there's a big hockey game, sorry.
Yeah. Well, it's it's hard to kind of use demographics and age. I guess I would say the older generation of today just automatically follow the rules, right? If you're alone in your car, they're wearing a mask because they're maybe, the Second World War, and that they lived that time and they followed, for obvious reasons, the government, because the government was actually real back then, not today. But I think our children are very intelligent in social media, and they can really impact our conversation in Canada by becoming involved and understanding it's their future. But when you're already 75 years old, you've kind of lived your life already. But our children really have an opportunity here to shape and mold our country and stand up for democracy and the happiness and freedom of Canadians, and force the government to work for us the way it's supposed to be. We vote them in, they work for us. We keep forgetting that they work for us. We just to accept, oh well, I guess that's just the way it is not a thought that is a healthy one. We need to be proactive.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you're right. It is our future that is being stolen, and that means it's our responsibility and our moral obligation to do what we can to prevent that from happening. Will it be successful? Not if we don't do anything. That's for
Exactly.
sure. So, right?
Action's better than no action. Like us doing this today is just one example of exposing the behavior and the abuse that's going on out there. And we have to let them know that's not acceptable. Canadians are not going to take that disrespect, especially military soldiers or certain types of individuals. We don't accept your disrespect. That's kind of what really upset me, is I've sacrificed my whole life for my country, and I love my country, but to come back to my country and just be thrown to the street, basically, here's your $6,000 fine. Just go about your business. Oh, sorry, you can't stay in any hotels because you don't have the right form of currency. You have to live in the street tonight with your luggage at 4 a.m. This is our respect for our soldiers. This is Canada. Welcome back. oh my Lord, what's going on? What's happening? That's what I was saying. I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? People need to wake up. This is serious. They cannot continue in this path without people rising up. And I think Canadians are quite polite and sorry. They're very apologetic, but I think Canadians have a little fight in them. They can fight when they're forced into a corner. And
That's the
we're
question,
getting,
what's it going to take for you
yeah,
to get angry? Because we need you. We really do. And then there's
exactly.
a healthy expression of anger, when in the face of injustice, anger is the appropriate response. Does not mean we need to go be violent and destroy things. No, but we
No,
have
no,
to
no.
be able to feel that human emotion that will propel us to do the right thing.
That's right. Signify the emotion with the action. Bring the two together. Wow, it's amazing what happens then.
Yeah, so let's go for a little
Group,
righteous
you
anger,
group
Canadian.
500,000 people together. You sure get the attention of the government because we're more than them. We're bigger than them.
Yeah,
We can't forget that. Together, we're powerful.
that's it. There's a
And
lot
we
more
can
of us.
decide. We will decide who's elected. People just need to educate themselves and really think about our future, about our children. I keep hammering that down because that's the priority, and like I say, I could have exploded and got violent and started flipping tables at the airport and at the hotel, threatening the guy's life. But I didn't do that because that's not going to help my situation. What we're doing today is a higher intelligent, being activists, I guess, in addressing these situations in a more intelligent form and letting the public know.
Yeah.
I think
And because we know that even though you're just one person, this is happening every day. Every time, a plane empties itself on Canadian soil, these experiences are happening. And the word you used is unacceptable. I agree, it's unacceptable.
I've seen there were two parents in front of me. They had 3 children. It's 2:30 in the morning, and they're keeping us in a lineup waiting to see these medical staff. I understand, but like, these people have just tested negative. Like, come on, people, like, or take care of these people first. Like, it's like I said, it's like herding a bunch of cows. Like, do we not have any dignity or respect for these organisms over here? Like, we're more than that. We're Canadian citizens. We need to be dealt with in a level of respect and use common sense. My God, these people, I'm afraid that our government has no common sense. That's why I strangely believe that there's a hidden agenda going on. And there's a lot of information that they don't relay to the public. And because of that, I'm very suspicious of a lot of things they're doing in news media and policies.
And for example, the Quarantine Act, as I just went, as we began this call, I went to quickly find out when this thing came into effect, thinking it was probably last year, just before the pandemic, maybe 2019. No, 2005, our Federal Quarantine Act came into effect. And when you do a little reading, a little poking around, essentially it's something that can be used whenever they want. So we have to really pay attention to these policies, these moves, these plays, these things. And just because the media is not talking about it doesn't mean it's not real, and it cannot very dramatically affect our lives. So I really appreciate you, Jason, for taking the time to tell this story. I hope your ticket works out well, and I'm sure we'll be able to post some kind of update on that. And now, have you heard about these tickets being overturned? That seems to be the rumors, going around. A lot of the emergency order and mandate related tickets are not being registered with the courts, or, if you don't actually go and pay it, it kind of disappears. How do you anticipate this working out?
Basically what they told me is that just to download this form, fill it out, fill out the back of the ticket where, like, I will arrive in court to contest this ticket, and basically send that back. And they said, yeah, your ticket will be added to many other tickets, and we'll probably won't hear a response from us for about 12 months. 12 months. And I haven't heard of any, just chuck the ticket and just carry on, carry on with your day.
So that's like it's marked against you for the next 12 months. Like, for example, that this is legally in play.
Yeah,
It could affect what, I don't know exactly what, but it could affect theoretically what you want to do in that time,
Yeah, what I was surprised is I got this I received the ticket, but when I got my negative test in the hotel, when I received the email saying I was negative, I was able to just jump on another plane, can carry on,
Right.
fly to my
Go
next
about your
destination
business.
with the ticket,
You
but
could use it as a mask.
yeah, just tape it on there, but yeah, 12 months. 12 months. Apparently they're going to get around to it. I don't know. I really don't know what their thought process is regarding all these thousands and thousands of tickets. People at the airport were getting these tickets. I could see people coming from Brazil or Mexico or America, but more in the poorer countries, the people just didn't have the big enough credit cards.
Can you imagine how stressful, and especially if your English
Oh,
isn't that good and you're in this situation, coming off the plane, my goodness.
and it's 2 a.m. and you have 2 children hanging there crying and they're all upset. And well, of course they are, they're tired.
Yeah.
And you're being basically tortured. And yes, the stress, there's minimal language, able to speak English and minimally, all of a sudden you find out, well, gee, I didn't book these hotels, I didn't know about it. Or my situation, I booked 2, but my card was full and I can't just apply for a credit card in Colombia. Like, that doesn't work, that's not going to happen. And tried to follow these procedures best I could, but I feel bad for these people. $6,255. Have a nice day. Go about your business. Go spread COVID down at the local bar or start coughing on people. Like, is there no concern?
No. I don't think it's about health. I would tend to agree with you. I think there's something else
There you
going on
go.
there. And
That's
I'm
right.
sure we'll find out more about what exactly that is as the months progress. So thanks
Well, I
for
think,
being along for the ride for us. Thank you for your service to
yeah.
your country. And I don't know what to say, but here we go. We'll keep going and we'll see what happens over the next, over the summer. And I really think, folks, talking to you again, that we have the summer to really get active, to try and understand our situation and do whatever we can. And this fall, they're coming for the children. Here in New Brunswick, we've been told there's lots of things going on that we should be on the lookout for. So
Exactly.
time to be vigilant and
Thank you
be
so
happy.
much.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.